Welcome back to Train Signal. You are watching the video for Lab 4, Monitoring Active Directory Replication. As the title suggests, in this particular video, you will learn how to monitor and troubleshoot the replication of Active Directory between our different domain controllers. This is what we have done so far. We have 2 sites and then we have 3 domain controllers. In California, DC1 is a bridgehead server. In North Carolina, DC3 is the bridgehead server, and replication is taking place between DC1 and DC3. Whereas within California, DC1 and DC2 are participating in intra-site replication. So now we have to finally monitor and make sure that the replication actually takes place between these domain controllers so that our Active Directory is in sync. Microsoft has given us several tools of doing so. So in this particular video, what we will do is we'll begin with installing the Active Directory support tools. These are tools that you need to install. They are not installed as part of the installation of Windows Server 2003. Then we will use the first tool known as a Replication Monitor to monitor and troubleshoot Active Directory. This is a GUI, or the Graphical User Interface based tool that we will use as an MMC snap-in to control and monitor the Active Directory. Then there are 2 great command line tools that will help us troubleshoot. In fact, eventually we'll be making a batch file so that once you run the batch file, your Active Directory will be replicated through all the domain controllers automatically. Finally, we'll use a tool known as the Active Directory Resizer, the Active Directory Sizer, that will help you plan the number of servers that you need in your network. At this point, you play the role of a consultant, where before you set up the Active Directory for a large enterprise, you determine exactly how many domain controllers you need, how many bridgehead servers you need, how many global catalog servers, and so forth. And this tool will let you decide exactly what the hardware requirements will be for a domain of a particular size to work efficiently. So let's get started with the first tool, which is the Replication Monitor. But before we do that, we need to install the Active Directory support tools. These tools are on the Server 2003 CD. So I'm going to minimize my recording screen over here. Minimize this as well. So here's my recording screen. Let's first connect to our domain controller DC1. So I'm going to open up the connection that I've already established over here for DC1. Let's log into DC1. There we go. So I'm currently in the domain controller DC1. I have my CD-ROM inserted over there, so let me open up the CD-ROM. And then what you need to do is go to the folder called Support, and in there is a folder called Tools. The tools that we are interested in are called is under the Support Tools MSI. This particular file, I'm going to run this file and basically install the support tools for Active Directory. So this should just take a few seconds. It's going to install the tools for us now. Only after these tools are installed can you use the command line tools and the additional snap-ins that I'm going to show you now. As soon as this is done, we will use the first tool known as the Replication Monitor. It's removing some of the backup files at this point. It's taking a few more minutes than I expected. So let's do the following. I'm going to go back to the screen over here. Let me minimize this. Okay. Going back to our screen. The first tool that we're going to talk about is what is known as a Replication Monitor. This is not available directly through the admin tools. So in other words, after we install the support tools, you won't be able to find it automatically installed under the admin tools, simply because this is an advanced tool and Microsoft wants to make sure that only administrators who are familiar with this tool actually run it. Replication Monitor is actually used to view the status of the Active Directory replication. It produces great reports. Looking at the report, you can tell exactly which domain controllers have actually replicated with each other and which domain controllers have failed in the replication process. You can also force the synchronization between domain controllers using this tool. Remember, we used to force the replication between domain controllers using Active Directory sites and services, and that is a preferred tool. But if you wish, you could force the replication right from the diagnostic tool, namely the Replication Monitor itself. And finally, it lets you view the network topology, the topology of your network in a graphical format. In other words, you'll be able to see the layout and see exactly where your domain controllers are. What we're going to do is the following. We'll use this tool to perform different activities, and I'm going to simulate a scenario where the replication actually works and the replication fails. Once the replication fails, we will read off important sections of the report so that you'll know exactly how to read the report in case a replication actually fails in a live network. So let's get started with that. I'm going to minimize this screen, and let's see if our installation has taken place at this point. There we go, it's finished. I'm done with this, and I'm going to close this screen. So once again, the support tools are installed. Please do not expect to find the support tools under admin tools. You will not find them over there. Okay, what you need to do is actually run it from the command prompt. To run the admin tools, you need to click on Start and then go to All Programs, and you will see that there is a new item installed over here called Windows Support Tools. However, you don't see the tools over here. The reason why this is created is so that you get to the command prompt right from here. This is important, folks, because you have to be in this particular folder where the support tools have been installed, simply because the support tools will run only from here. Okay, let me just make a point over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the root and then type over here replication monitor, and there you go. It will not work. Okay, so I have to be at that particular location. So let me change to that particular directory, files, and then over here I need to change to the support tools folder, and I'm at the right location at this point. So rather than making you type all this, what they've done is they've given you a shortcut link. All you have to do is click on Start, All Programs, and in there the Windows Support Tools, and then go to the command prompt so that you are at the right location, simply because this was not in the DOS path. Alrighty, so now over here, to run the replication monitor, you need to type the command replmon and then hit the enter key. What this will do is open up what is known as an MMC or a snap-in, and over here you have to add your server. So what this has done is open up a blank tool for us, and which allows us to monitor the domain controllers. Now remember, the only servers that you're going to monitor are the domain controllers, because those are the servers that actually participate in the Active Directory replication. So to begin with, let's add our domain controllers to this particular tool. So I'm going to right click on monitor servers and then click on add monitored server. It wants to know how do you want to add it. So I'm going to say add the server explicitly by name, and then over here just click on this particular screen over here, and then I'm going to click on search for search the directory for the server to add, and I click on the next button. It should give us a list. Well, from the California site, I'm going to select DC1 and then click on finish, and then there we go. It's just added DC1 as the monitored server in this tool. So in this manner, you need to add all the other domain controllers that you would like to monitor with this tool. Let's go ahead and add the other two domain controllers that we have, namely DC2 and DC3. So let's once again follow the same steps. Right click on monitored servers over here, click on add monitored server, and then let it search for it in the Active Directory. I'm going to click on the next button over here. This time we will pick up DC2 and then click on finish. That added DC2, and lastly, using the same process, we will add DC3, which is in the North Carolina site. And these three domain controllers have been added. Now, it also, once the servers have been added, it gives you a visual clue as to exactly how you can navigate the different servers in this tool. To begin with, what it does is under monitored servers, it first gives you the two different sites. That way you can see all the servers in the site together. So under California, if I expand it, I see my two servers. And notice the difference in the icons over here. This particular one, DC1, has the shape of a globe, meaning that this is also a global catalog server. DC2 is not a global catalog server. If you recall, one of the good design principles was, let me take you back to this diagram, one of the good design principles was that you must have a global catalog server at each location. So in California, DC1 was a global catalog server, and in North Carolina, DC3 was a global catalog server. So if I expand North Carolina, here we go. DC3 is our global catalog server over here. So very visually, it tells you, it gives you a snapshot of, and you can tell exactly which of these servers are also global catalogs. Now I'm going to expand these, and as I expand this, you will see that you're looking at different objects over here. These are nothing but partitions of the Active Directory. So some information is being stored in this particular partition. In particular, this particular partition, benandbrady.com, is storing information about the entire domain benandbrady.com. And this particular one is storing the configuration information. This one is storing the schema information. These two are, this particular one is storing the DNS information, and the last one is storing the forest zone information. So once again, the entire Active Directory is split up into these partitions. Partitions are nothing but components of the Active Directory, and each of these components contains the information that, that it requires to replicate. Now, what I just did was expanded DC Ben and Brady, DC is going to come, meaning show me the domain controllers within DC benandbrady.com. And over here, as you can see, there are two different objects that showed up over here. Let me explain to you how this works. What this is saying is the following. Because I expanded DC1, what this is saying is that DC1 has two replication partners, DC2 in the California site and DC3 in the North Carolina site. Also, if you notice the difference in the logos over here, you will see that the icon for DC3 has a symbol of a telephone, meaning that this is a bridgehead server, whereas DC2 is the server in the same location, so it does not have to be the bridgehead server. So once again, visually you can tell which is a global catalog and which is a bridgehead server. Let's verify this under the DC3 side as well. So what I'm going to do is expand DC3 over here to see the different partitions of the Active Directory of DC3, and then expand this one over here. And again, as you can see, DC1 is a bridgehead server. So these two are participating together in the replication as bridgehead servers. Now, if I expand DC2, and then over here, remember, DC1 and DC2 are the only two domain controllers that are participating in the replication. So going back to our diagram, the replication is taking place between DC1 and DC3 because they're bridgehead servers, and between DC1 and DC2 because they're servers within the same domain. I'm sorry, they're servers within the same site rather. The replication between DC1 and DC2 is intra-site. The replication between DC1 and DC3 is inter-site. I keep repeating this concept just to make sure that you clearly understand and you can relate to exactly how we set it up versus what you're seeing over here. Okay, so over here you saw exactly the same map. DC1 has two replication partners, DC2, DC3, of which DC3 is also a preferred bridgehead server. The other thing to notice over here also is the fact that this information, domain DNS zones, is not repeated under the DC2 and DC3 simply because we have just one DNS server, which is DC1 itself. And in fact, the server has been set up what is known as an Active Directory integrated DNS zone, meaning that the DNS information is part of the Active Directory itself. Those of you who have gone through the advanced courses in DNS know that there are three different types of zones: primary, secondary, and AD integrated. The one that is set up currently on DC1 is AD integrated zone, meaning that the DNS information is part of the Active Directory. Let me quickly show you that so that you understand why these two actually showed up over here and not in the other three. So let's quickly go to our DNS. I'm going to go to, on DC1, I'm going to go to Admin Tools. And in Admin Tools, we're going to select DNS. And if you recall, we've gone here before to show you, and I've taken you over here just to show you that all the different domain controllers are listed out here with the correct IP addresses. However, if you right click on the zone, which is benandbrady.com, and then go to the properties of this zone, you will notice that there are different types of zones. There we go. And the type of zone that we are running is what is known as Active Directory Integrated Zone, meaning that the information that is in this particular zone, namely the listing of computers and their IP addresses, is part of the Active Directory. So every time the Active Directory replicates with other domain controllers, it is also replicating the DNS information with other DNS servers as well. However, since we had just one DNS server, there is no DNS zones on these two other servers. So if you were to go ahead and set up DC2 as a DNS server as well, you will notice that this partition will also show up under DC2. So just want to make sure that you understand clearly as to exactly what you're watching in this particular screen. So to summarize, let's minimize all this and go through this process just one more time. In order to run these admin tools, you need to go to the command prompt, and then over there type replication monitor. The command for that is replmon. This will bring up a blank tool for replication monitoring. This is basically an MMC or Microsoft Management Console that you can eventually save. In fact, let's do that. I'm going to say File, Save Monitored List As, and then over here, I'm going to just save it to the desktop and call it call it bb.com. Okay, so this will be the bb.com list. Click on save, and it has been exported. So that next time when you open up this tool, you can simply open up that file rather than add these domain controllers all over again. Once you open up this tool, you have to add the monitored servers by right-clicking and then clicking on add monitored server, and then go ahead and monitor all the domain controllers that you wish to monitor. I would add each and every domain controller so that very visually you know exactly what your enterprise network looks like, how many sites you have, and within each site you can graphically or just by looking at the logos or the icons tell exactly which are the global catalogs, meaning the ones that have the symbol of the globe, and which of these are what are known as, expanding this, which of these are bridgehead servers. And you can see that by clicking on this. Now let's look at some monitoring information. What I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to click on this particular link first. So in other words, I'm looking at the replication information between DC1 and DC2. And over here, it gives me a status report saying that the last replication attempt was successful, and this attempt took place on 1/10/2005 at 5:52 p.m. Alrighty, so every time you replicate, you will see that you'll get a status report over here, and it will tell you whether or not the attempt was successful. I'm going to click on this one, and then again, this was successful as well. So we have, our domain is in sync. All the labs and all the activities that I've performed so far were actually live labs. We were replicating our domain as we were building it up. And as you can see over here, our replication is taking place successfully both intra-site within the same site and inter-site between domain controllers in the two sites. So this gives you a good information, status information as to what is working and what is not working. Now, if you recall, you can also synchronize the domain right from here. To do that, so let's say you would like to synchronize or replicate DC1 with DC2. You select this object, you right-click, and then and over here you can select synchronize with this replication partner. Here we go. Synchronization queued successfully. Basically, what this is saying is that give it a few minutes, and then the replication will take place as well. So let's give it a few seconds, and then afterwards, when we refresh the screen, you will notice that here we go. It actually automatically updated it. As you can see, the last replication was 5:52, and it just replicated again at 6:08 p.m. So this replication was successful. In this manner, you can replicate with each of these partners as you go along. So far, what have you seen in the monitored servers or under the replication monitor tool? Let's go back to our little notes tab over here. What we have done is we have seen whether or not the replication partner actually works or fails. And I'm going to actually simulate a scenario where the replication partner fails, so you can see exactly what the report looks like. You can also see a view of the history of successful and failed replication for troubleshooting purposes. And this basically shows up right over here. Going back to this tool, it shows up right over here as a history. In fact, you can also generate a report. So let's go ahead and do that. What I'm going to do is click on this tool over here. I'm sorry, I'm going to click on DC1, right click, and over here you can get different kinds of reports. What we will do is go ahead and click on this report called generate status report. I'm going to click on this, and now it's going to ask me where do you want to create the report. Let's save it to the desktop, and over here I'm going to call it status 1 and then save. Now it's telling me that it's going to select all these options, meaning it's going to select the connections generated by the knowledge consistency checker, the FSMO roles, and so forth. I'm going to go through the FSMO roles in the next video, and I'm going to leave all these options on, and then click on OK. You can select exactly what you want in that report, and then uncheck some of the options if you so desire. So the report has been generated, it is completed. Now, if you recall the report, I can show it to you right over here actually. Let's minimize all this and go back to our screen for DC1. There we go. The report that it generated had an extension of .log, and it is very easy to open up that same report within this tool itself. So I'm going to say File, Open Log, and then over here open up this log called status1.log. It's a notepad file, so you can open it within the replication monitor tool, or you can open it separately as well. Now let's go through this report and see exactly what data has been generated. The first portion of this report over here is the DC1 data, and this basically gives you the information of the different zones and the different Active Directory partitions of this particular domain controller. So like we saw before, these are the different zones. And now going down over here, it gives you information about the global catalog as well. It has copies of the global catalogs on the following, And here are the different connection objects. In other words, DC1 is connected to DC3 as well as to DC2, and for each of this it basically shows whether this was automatically generated or did the administrator generate it. If you remember, in one of the videos I had generated a connection object manually just to show you how it can be done. Well, here it is. It says connection object, backup object, and it was done by manually. It says over here administrator generated, yes. Whereas this particular connection object was automatically generated by the system. So it says administrator generated, it basically says auto over here. And a connection name, remember this is the name that we gave this particular connection object, whereas the other connection name was automatically generated and it gives it an ID automatically. So this is giving you all the information about your different connection objects. And finally, the replication status. So here we go. It's basically showing how many times the replication fails. So number of failures is 0, and that's exactly what we want to see from time to time. If you recall, there were two different transport mechanisms, RPC, remote procedure calls, and the other one was SMTP. We are using the IP or the inter-site IP replication using RPC, and that's a transport protocol that is being showed over here. The other thing that you have to be familiar with is what is known as the USN. The USN stands for update sequence number. And the way this works is the following. I'm going to illustrate this with an example. So let's go back to our diagram of our network and let's take an example. On DC1, there is a user called Michelle Wong. Let's say that you went ahead and you changed the telephone number for this user. So you changed the telephone number for the user Michelle Wong on DC1. Now, when server 2000 was created, a lot of replication was an entire replication of that user object from one domain controller to another. All that has changed, or it has dramatically been improved in server 2003. What will happen is the following. Only the property that has changed on Michelle Wong's user account will actually get replicated from DC1 to DC3 as well as to DC2, not the entire user object DC Wong. What this results is in smaller sizes for replication traffic between domain controllers. Now, the way this happens is the following. Every time you make a change, the update sequence number or USN for that particular object goes up by a certain number. It increments by 1 or 2. DC2 checks for the update sequence numbers for the same object on its own server and sees that, well, I have an older number than you. And then it requests for those changes, and only the changes taken place by the USN number will be replicated from DC1 to DC2. In other words, every time you change a property of a user object, the entire user object is not replicated from DC1 to DC2, only the changes are replicated. And this is facilitated by what is known as USN numbers. And if you're more interested to see where these USN numbers are, let me show you where they are as well. Going back to DC1, let me minimize this report screen over here. We'll take a little digression. But this way I'll be able to show you exactly where these different things are so that you can tie all your theory with practice together. So what I'm going to do is go to Active Directory Users and Computers. And if you recall, I had said that every time you install a domain controller, it is a great idea to actually go and activate this feature called Advanced Features. What I'm going to do is, for a moment, turn it off, just to show you how different it can be. I just turned off the Advanced Features. As you can see, it is not highlighted over here. And I'm going to go to the properties of Michelle Wong's user account. So I'm going to right click on Michelle Wong, go to properties, and you see a number of tabs over here. Okay, the tab that I'm interested in actually does not show up over here. I'm going to close this box and now activate the advanced features. And now this time, when we go to Michelle Wong's user property, you'll be able to see the tab that we're interested in. And the one that we're interested in is, I think I missed it, object. There we go. And right over here it shows you what is known as the update sequence number, the USN number. Originally when it was created, it was 16,777, and then after the changes were made, it is 16,782. So this update sequence, now every time you make a change to the user object, this sequence number changes as well. Let's see if that is true. The number at this point is 16,782. Let me make a change to this user object. What I'm going to do is add Michelle to make Michelle a member of a different group. So what we're going to do is go to the tab member of, and over here add her to the enterprise admins group. So I'm just going to type ENT over here, and here we go, it picked it up. I'm going to click on, just reposition this window a little bit over here, click on apply, okay. And now let's go back to Michelle Wong's user account and then go back to the object tab. So here we go. Here's the object tab. And then this number is now 16,782. After a few minutes, you will notice that once it has updated the object, you will see the number go up also. So let me click on apply OK one more time, and then let's go back to it and see if the number has changed. Okay, it's still showing the same number. But you will notice that after a few changes are made, the number actually goes up, and then this is how it informs the other domain controllers as to how this change takes place. We're going to revisit this one more time and make some more changes and make sure that the number actually goes up. You'll be able to see that. So I'm going to minimize this, or actually let's get out of this for now and go back to our report that we were observing before. So here's a status report for this, and it basically shows the update sequence numbers and what it was before the replication took place. And then it shows the information for the other partners. So this was the information for the partner DC3, and now here's the information for the partner DC2, and whether or not replication was successful. Here we go. Number of failures 0, replication was successful, and so forth. And now it's going to show the replication for each of the different directory partitions as well. So now it's showing the changes for the configuration partition and so forth. So this report is very useful. What I would do is from time to time run this report and then go through it and just make sure everything looks okay. There are no failures, or it does not give you any. Basically, you're looking for red flags and making sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to. There is also something known as the flexible single master operations role that I will go through in the next video. And this report also shows you what the roles for different domain controllers are. In our particular case, and you will learn in a different video, that all the flexible single master operation roles is taken by the first domain controller, because that was the first domain controller that was installed in this particular forest, which can be changed. And if you do change it, it will show you exactly who has what role. But that is a topic of a discussion in a different video. So I just want to show you how to read this report. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to play a little game over here so that we can see some results that do not look as good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this, and let's go back to our recording screen, and I'm going to connect to our second domain controller, which is DC2. Let's log into DC2, and I'm going to deliberately shut it down so that we see some error messages in our result. So what I'm trying to do is replicate a scenario where for some reason replication is not taking place as expected. So it's going to shut down this domain controller, and we should soon lose a connection. There we go. So we know for a fact that the domain controller has actually gone down. Now what we're going to do is the following. Let's go to DC1, and once again let's go to Active Directory users and computers, and I'm going to make a few more changes to Michelle Wong's user account. So let's go up over there and use this test user Michelle Wong. Go to the properties. What I'm going to do is add an office over here. So I'm over here under the office field, I'm going to type headquarters. And under the telephone number field, let's put in a telephone number for Michelle. Her number is 555-1212. Okay, and then click on the apply button over here. Now let's go ahead and see if the update sequence number has actually changed. Maybe I'll get lucky this time. Let's try it out. There we go. Object, and definitely gone up substantially because of the number of changes that we made. So just required a little bit of patience out there, but the change that I expected to find actually is now, you can actually see it. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go to DC3. So what I'm doing now is let's close this. I really don't need this anymore. And let's go to DC3 this time. Let's log into DC3. And on DC3, let's create a different object in DC3. I'm going to go to Active Directory users and computers, and this time what I'll do is create an OU, and let's call it OU North Carolina. So quickly over here I'm going to right click, new organizational unit, and let's call it NC, in short for North Carolina. So I created I created an object organizational unit in DC3. And in DC1, I changed the properties for Michelle Wong's user account. And if everything is okay in our network, the replication should take place, and after replication has actually taken place, we should be able to see the same objects on all domain controllers in our domain, except for DC3 because DC3 is unavailable. So I'm going to minimize this screen, and let's go back to DC1. I'm on DC1 now, and let's replicate like we normally do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, let's replicate from here if you want. What we're going to do is click on this one, right click, and then say synchronize this directory partition. Let's synchronize the whole, rather than just synchronize this directory partition, let's synchronize everything with DC1. So over here I'm going to say synchronize each directory partition with all servers, and that should do the job. And over here what I'm going to say is that disable transitive replication, I don't want to do that. Push mode, just leave everything else blank so that it does its best to actually replicate, so we don't control how this replication actually takes place. So I'm going to click on yes over here, and it will attempt to replication with it will attempt to replicate with all the replication partners. You will see that it's going to hang up over here just a little bit longer than than you would expect, simply because it is really trying hard to replicate with DC2, and it is not successful in doing so. So it keeps trying, it gives up, moves on to DC3, and then finally when we generate the report, we'll be able to see a bunch of error messages. So let it do its job over here. If you want, you can minimize over here, and going back to DC1. Oops. Let's use a tool that is familiar to us in replicating, known as Active Directory sites and services. Just want to make sure that you're comfortable replicating, and the primary tool that is used to replicate is actually Active Directory sites and services. And right here, over here, it will tell you the results immediately. So for example, over here, I'm replicating between DC1 and DC3, and it should be okay. Let's do that, and it says that it's been queued for replication simply because it is taking place between sites or inter-site. However, over here, I should have trouble. Let's try that. There we go. It's trying, and it should fail as expected, because we know for a fact that DC2 is unavailable. Let's give it a few more seconds, and then later on what we will do is we will generate a second status report, and then in that status report you'll be able to see that certain things have failed, and you should be able to look at exactly which domain controllers failed to replicate. So here we go. DC1, DC2 and DC1 were not able to replicate simply because the RPC server, that is the transport mechanism that is used for replication, was not available. I'm going to click on the OK button, and it's time to generate some reports now. So let's see if you remember how to generate the report. Going back to Replication Monitor, I would like to generate a status report. So what you do is you right click on DC1 and then say generate status report. We're going to call this one status 2, and then click on the save button over here, and then let's make sure that all the options are selected, and let it generate a report. Done. Let's go ahead and open the report by clicking on File, Open Log, and then here's the log for the report that we just ran. So here we go. With DC3, let me just reposition the screen a little bit over here so we can read it better. Okay, so this is the information for DC1, and here are the connection objects. Nothing has changed over here. Just because the server is unavailable doesn't mean the connection object changes, but here's the replication partner status. So with DC2, let's see what happened. There we go, number of failures twice. Remember, we tried to replicate 2 times and both times it failed, and here it says replication server is not available. Whereas over here, we were able to successfully replicate our changes and everything is fine over here. Okay, so I'm sure this helps you a little bit. Now let's verify a few other things. I think we're done with the, let me show you a few other things with Replication Monitor before I finish this topic. But let's also go back to Active Directory site, Active Directory users and computers, and check something. Remember, I created the North Carolina OU on DC3. I'm on DC1, and here we go, the North Carolina OU showed up. So I'm trying to show you in different ways that all the labs that we're doing are actually working, and if you're following these labs yourself, they should work as well too. And if they do not work, now you have all the troubleshooting tools that you need to actually troubleshoot and actually make it work. Now I'm on DC3, and over here, if I were to go to Michelle Wong's user account, I should be able to see the changes in her Still not done. Okay, it's going to take a few more minutes. Remember, replication is one way. In other words, it replicated from DC3 to DC1, but not yet from DC1 to DC3. So let's give it a few more minutes. I'm just refreshing over here, and then let's check one more time. Not yet. Let me force it one more time, and then we'll go back and check again whether or not replication has taken place. So what I'm going to do is, in fact, this is a perfect example that we can troubleshoot. And there are various reasons why the replication did not go through in this way or not, simply because of the replication schedule. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go over here. Let's go back to Active Directory Sites and Services. And what we need to do is make sure that we force the replication from DC1 to DC3. And the way you do that is by going to the North Carolina site and then going to DC3. And look at this. Now it's saying it's going to force it from DC1 to DC3. So let's force it. It says that it has queued the connection. I don't know how long it will take, but let's give it a shot. I'm going to refresh the screen so that we're looking at the latest objects. Refreshing is usually done by clicking on the F5 button. And let me just refresh the domain one more time. There we go. And now let's try if this has taken place. If not, we'll go back a few minutes later and check. Properties. There we go. It worked. So I didn't intend it to take place in this manner, but as you saw, pushing replication actually works and it helps. And again, the reason it did not go through immediately simply was because it was inter-site replication, and inter-site replication also follows a schedule. You just have to wait long enough until the schedule hits, and then the replication will take place. So going back to DC1 and going back to the replication monitor, let's see what we've covered so far. What I'm going to do is go back to our notes over here. You can see when a replication partner fails. You can see or view the history of successful and failed replications. You can view the properties of replication directory partners, which is simply going to right-clicking on this and then clicking on properties, and you can basically navigate the different tabs over here and see exactly what the different properties are. For example, DC1 is also a preferred bridgehead server and says yes. And again, we knew that because we saw the symbol of a telephone later on over there. And then under TCP/IP configuration, you can also see exactly how it is configured. In fact, it also shows the MAC address right over here, who the gateway is, and so forth. So this is also a great way of going and finding out all that you need to know about domain controllers. We saw that. We saw who the replication partners were. We were able to force a replication. You can also trigger the knowledge consistency checker. Once again, knowledge consistency checker is a program or an algorithm that's built into the Active Directory so that it automatically finds replication partners and replication paths for domain controllers. To push that, all you do is you simply right-click on your domain controller, and then over here, click on check replication topology, and it will basically trigger the KCC, and then it says that KCC was triggered, it was successful. Basically, it knows that there is a partner for each domain controller that exists. And that should, I think, do it for this one. Here we go. Monitors replication status for domain controllers from multiple forests. In our example, what we did was we simply added additional servers by clicking on add monitored server, and then simply added them over here. Well, just to keep in mind that this is a central monitoring tool. In other words, if you had more than one domain, or in fact if you had more than one forest, you could still add the domain controllers from those domains or from those forests right over here, so that you can monitor the replication between the domain controllers of all the different domains within the same forest, or you can also monitor different forests within the same central tool. So that should do it for replication monitor. This is a pretty long video, and I covered the replication monitor extensively simply because this is the preferred graphical user interface tool that is used to actually monitor Active Directory replication. So the next tool that we're going to do are some command line tools. So let's get started with that. Let us now study the replication administration tool, also known as RepAdmin. This particular tool is a command line tool. In other words, it's not a graphical tool like you saw in Replication Monitor. This you have to go and type a command, and it basically shows everything about replication from a domain controller's perspective. So let me show you exactly what this means. What I'm going to do is minimize this, and this is perhaps one of the favorite tools of mine. And a lot of domain administrators use this tool simply because it can be pretty powerful, as like you're going to see now. So what I'm going to do is run this tool one more time. Remember, you have to go to support tools and then go to the command prompt and run it from there. So over here, let's type this command, rep admin. Now, if you just hit enter over here, it won't do much. It needs some switch. Okay, so once again, rep admin, and the first switch we're going to do is slash, I'm going to say over here show REPL, and this will basically show the replication partners of DC1. So once again, the command is rep admin with the switches show REPL DC1, and it's going to show us the replication partners for domain controller DC1. Let's hit enter, and the screen went by too quickly. Let's see if I can position this a little bit better. So that I can show you a little bit more of as to exactly what is taking place over here. So here we go. Let's go down the list. This is where we were when we just typed the command, and this is what happened when we actually typed it the correct way. And over here, it should show us the neighbors, which is DC2 and DC3, and it's showing us the transport mechanism by which replication is taken place. So those of you who would like to type command prompts, this is great. Over here, you can find out exactly how replication is taking place and who the replication partners are. And again, you can always generate a report from here. Once again, look at this. DC2 is failing simply because DC2 is still shut down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to physically turn on the I'm going to turn on the domain controller DC2. I just did that. That's why you lost the video a little bit. I physically turned on DC2. We'll give it a while to boot up, and then we'll connect to it and make sure that it is up and running. So to summarize this, let's do this one more time. I'm going to clear the screen. If I simply type REPL admin, REPADMIN, so that's the replication administration tool, and then the switch is REPL ADMIN. And then over here, if I type DC3, it's going to show us the replication partners for DC3. Just reposition the screen over here a little bit. Okay, I typed the command incorrectly. It's show REPL DC3. And now it's going to show us the partners for DC3 and so forth. So that's one common usage of this command. Administrators type this command to quickly find out who the replication partners are. Then the next one is to show the connection objects for each of these domain controllers. So for example, to see the connection objects for domain controller 1 or DC1, we need to type rep admin. And then over here, this time the command, the switch will be show con, meaning show connection objects, and then DC1. So this is going to show us the two connection objects. Once again, it's a long printout. So if you go over here, it's going to show us the two different connection objects. And here's the first one with DC2, and you can see it's failing because it's not up and running yet. And it's showing us a report basically saying that where the failures has taken place. Again, DC2 is still unavailable. Okay, and then here's for DC3, and then no failures. Okay, so it gives us some tools. Once again, what I've showed you so far is no big deal as far as being able to see it in command prompt, because Replication Monitor showed you the same thing, perhaps in a better format. This is the real strength of Replication Admin tool. What are we going to do next? What I'm going to do is clear the screen. Okay, so the screen is cleared now. And now I will show you how to actually perform replication between domain controllers using the command rep admin. So here's the command for that. Rep admin. You know what? I need to start my command prompt one more time simply because I'm at the root, and like you saw before, it won't work. So let's do this one more time. I'm going to go back to the command prompt so I'm at the right location, and this time let's type the following command, rep admin. So that's a command slash, the switch is replicate. Okay, so what you're telling the rep admin command is to start the replication process. Now you need to describe who to replicate between. So over here I'm going to say DC1 space DC2, and then I need to specify exactly what the domain is. So to do that, you need to type it in the Active Directory language, which is DC equals Ben and Brady, comma DC equals com. Those of you who are familiar with, just reposition this one more time. Sorry about that. I'm sure you have a hard time looking at a screen just like the way I am, simply because I have to have a certain screen resolution for the production of this video, and sometimes it is not possible to see the whole screen. But here we go. This is good enough. repadmin/replicate DC1 with DC2, and then I have to spell it out or actually describe the FQDN for DC2, which is Ben and Brady, comma DC equals com. Alrighty, now let's make sure that DC2 has actually come up before I try that. So let's go back to our recording studio and then double click on DC2 and see if it's available. Looks good so far. Okay, it's coming up. So I'd physically turned on DC2 and it's up and running now. So now I can safely go and run that command. So going back to DC1, because we typed the command over there, I'm going to hit the enter button over here. And there we go. Replication from, note this, replication from DC2 to DC1 was successful. So when I write the command in this manner, DC1 to DC2, it's actually replicating from DC2 to DC1. And this brings us back to the same point. Remember, in Active Directory replication, there is no self-serve. DC1 and DC2, when they replicate, it's always self-serve. In other words, DC1 is asking DC2 if there are any changes, and if so, the replication will take place. So what happened was the replication took place from DC2 to DC1. Alrighty. Now, if you would like to replicate in the other manner, in other words, from DC1 to DC2, you're going to type the same command. So I'm going to use a shortcut key over here and then go and make the following change. So we're going to change this to DC2 and change this to DC1. And now replication will take place in the opposite direction. Here we go. Synchronize successfully from DC1 to DC2. So please make sure you know how to run this command. And quite frankly, every time you run this, you should do it both ways in any case, so that whatever changes are on each of the domain controllers will be synchronized at the same time. Now, why am I showing you this? Again, you could very easily do this from Active Directory sites and services. However, look at the scenario where you have several domain controllers and you have to go and replicate a lot of these domain controllers one after another. Would it be nice to actually create a batch file and then save this batch file right on a desktop so that you can very quickly replicate all the domain controllers in a domain simply by double clicking on a batch file? Isn't that exciting? So let's do that. What I'm going to do is close the screen now that I've shown you how to use the command, and what we will do is use Notepad and open up a text file, and in this text file let's write down the text to create a replication that is suitable for our domain. So what I'm going to do is create the batch file right here live in front of you so that you know exactly how to do it. We're going to start with a remark statement basically saying that this batch file replicates all DCs in okay. The remark file, or this is simply a remark. This file will not actually run. This is just a note that you're leaving for yourself, so you know exactly what this particular batch file will do. Now let's type a first command. The command is repadmin, and the switch is replicate. And now let's do this carefully. I'm going to type DC1, DC2. So it's going to be from DC2 to DC1, and then type DC equals Ben and Brady, comma DC equals com. All I have to do is make variations of this particular line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this line and then use it repeatedly. So I'm going to go to the next line and paste it. This time what we will do is make a change over here. Instead of DC1 to DC2, it should be DC2 to DC1. Okay, go back to the next line, and then again I'm going to paste it over here one more time. And now let's discuss this. Here's our network diagram. So we have replicated between DC1 and DC2. Now, the way we designed a model, we should also replicate from DC1 to DC3, and then from DC3 to DC1. DC2 and DC3 are not directly replication partners, so we should leave that alone. So the next two lines that I should type should be replication lines for DC1 and DC3. So let's do that. Going back to our file over here. So this time it should be between DC1 and DC3. Go to the new line. I'm going to paste it one more time. And now let's change this from DC3 to DC1 here. Okay, I think it looks good. So we have taken care of replication between all our domain controllers in this manner. So I'm going to save this file. Be careful when you save it. Make sure it is saved as a batch file. It does not put the extension at the end over here. So what I'm going to do is, to begin with, I'm going to save it to the desktop and use quotation marks, because when you use the quotation marks over here, it will not put the .txt extension. If it does put a .txt extension, just go ahead and rename it if you need to. In other words, the file should be whatever .bat. It should not be whatever .bat.txt. So over here I'm going to type the word domain replication .bat. By putting it in quotation marks, it will not put the extension .txt over here for me. And I'm saving it to the desktop. So click on save. And I'm going to close this file. And here's our batch file that was created. Now, if hopefully the command was good, I don't think we made a mistake. And if so, let's double click on this and run and see if the domain actually replicates. So I'm going to double click on this file and didn't see any error messages. All right, so I think it took place okay. The best way to verify is by actually going to the replication monitor and generating a report. So we don't have to do this, but just for the sake of practice and make sure that what we did actually worked, let's do that. So I'm sorry, I was lost a little bit over there. I'm going to go to support tools and then go to command prompt, and over here we need to type replmon, and then over here open the monitored list. I thought we saved it on a desktop. For some reason our list is not saved, or maybe I saved it carelessly without looking at exactly where I saved it. That's alright. We'll quickly add in the three domain controllers. Shouldn't take that long. So that's DC1. Actually, quite frankly, I don't even need all the domain controllers, simply because I need to generate a report and all I need is one object to be able to do so. So I'm going to right click on this and say generate status report, and this time we're going to call it status 3. Click on save, and then let's run it with all the criterion, and it's generating the report. So a combination of running this report and the batch file that is just created will help you tremendously in administering your domain and making sure that replication is taking place as expected. So hopefully we won't see any error messages over here. Let's see. Going down the list over here. So this is our report, and in the beginning it just shows the connection objects, which is not an act of interest to us at this point. Here we go. Between DC1 and DC3, number of failures 0, which is good. DC2, number of failures 0. So a command was good, folks. Okay, our domain was able to replicate. In fact, you can also see it right over here. I just replicated. If you recall, we had replicated once and then a second time, and this is the replication that just took place a few minutes ago. You can also see it right from the time clock over here, 6:48, and it's about 6:47:25. So it actually took place, and it took place okay. So that was the command known as repadmin. Very popular. One of the best reasons of using the repadmin command is so that you can create a batch file, and now rather than go to Active Directory sites and services and replicate each of the connections, simply double click the file and your domain is in sync. Isn't that a great feature? Let us now look at two other tools that can be used from time to time to monitor and administer your network. The next tool we're going to study is what is known as the Directory Services Utility. This is basically used to compare two different trees and make sure that the replicas are exactly the same. What this tool does is compare statistics such as megabytes per server, objects per server, and so forth, and make sure that the two domain controllers basically have the same kind of information. You may have done this when you copy files from one server to another, and you would like to verify that the copied files are exactly the same. From time to time, I'm sure you've done that. You've right-clicked on the folder that you copied and make sure that the size of the folder, let's say the size of the folder was 23 megabytes, is the same as the copied folder, which should also be 23 megabytes. For example, if the original folder had 21 files, you should also look at the copied folder and make sure that it has 21 files as well. So that's the kind of comparison analysis that directory services utility does. So let's see how to use that. Once again, I'm going to minimize this and go back to DC1, and over here we will open up the command prompt one more time. And in the command prompt this time we could type the directory statistics tool, and this is a pretty long command, so I'm going to explain as I type this command. Let's see if I can reposition this a little bit better so you can see more of it on the screen. So here we go. So let's start with the command first. It's called ds directory services. It's actually DSA directory services administration stat. That's how you remember it, DSA stat. And then the switch is /s for statistics. And then we want to compare the statistics between the following two domain controllers. So you put DC1, and then you put a semicolon, and then put DC2. Let's see if the command is clear so far. The command is DSA, Directory Services Administration Statistics, /s is the switch for statistics itself, put a colon, and then put the two domain controllers that you would like to compare, DC1 and DC2 in our example. And then you have to put a /b switch and describe exactly where these what you're trying to compare. So what we're doing is comparing, I'm going to put it lowercase, and then over here you're comparing the following databases or the following partitions. I'm going to start with an open quotation over here and then type over here CN common name equals domain controllers, comma DC equals, this is where we run into trouble because we can't see the screen now. There we go. I can see Ben and Brady, comma DC equals com. Let me explain to you what this is. Over here you're giving the location of DC1 and DC2 in the tree. If you recall, DC1 and DC2 are in the container domain controllers, which is in benandbrady.com. If this command is good, I'm going to hit the enter over here and we'll find out in a moment whether it worked. Yes, it did. Okay, it should basically give you a report, and it is comparing, as I said, the two domain controllers and verifying whether things are exactly the same on both. And what you're actually looking for is the result at the bottom over here, and it says over here pass. Look at this. So that's a good message. Basically over here is saying that there's no missing replies. In other words, it compared the directory databases of both servers and found that on DC1 and DC2 the information in the active directory databases are equal. In fact, look at this sentence also, server sizes are equal. Okay, so there is everything is in sync, and that's the basic use of this tool. So it's a good idea to run this tool from time to time and see if everything is in sync. We'll close this particular window and then go back to our notes over here, and that leads us to the next tool, which is the domain controller diagnostic tool. This is used to run some diagnostic tests on the domain controller itself. So let's minimize this and see how to use this tool. I'm back on DC1 and I'm going to go back to the command prompt. And over here, let's type the following command, dcdiag. That's the command for the diagnostic tool. So I'm going to put a /s for the status of DC1. Okay, so /s is status, and I would like to run diagnostic tools or diagnostic testing on DC1. What it's going to do is it's going to run different kinds of testing and then make sure that everything is in sync, and whether the schema and everything else passes what are known as reference checks or validation checks, just to make sure that your Active Directory is actually it basically checks for the integrity of the Active Directory. It also checks for the different roles that it has, the FSMO roles. It checked and made sure that the roles are working okay on that particular domain controller. So again, from time to time you can run this tool. Also, one of the this can be done for any command prompt, but I just want to show it to you over here. A lot of times when you run a command like this, it just flies by on the screen. It would be nice to actually capture it to a text file and then perhaps even print it or keep it for documentation. So to do that, what you need to do is type the command the way it is, and you may already know this. But when you type a command like this, the standard input is the keyboard. In other words, you're providing the input to the command using the keyboard, and the standard output is the screen, so that the moment you hit enter, it's actually showing you the results on the screen. You can change the standard output to a different location, such as a file. So to do that, what you need to do is put a space over here and enter the greater than symbol. So here we go. I'm going to enter the greater than symbol, and then over here you need to type the name of the file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a file in the C drive. Always specify the location so you know exactly where it is, so it's easy to find it. And I'm going to call it dc1.txt. Okay, so this time when I hit the enter key, you will see that it does not show the results on the screen like it did last time. What it actually did was opened up a file called dc1.txt and put the result in it. So now I can minimize this and go to the C drive of the domain controller, and here's the file dc1.txt, and it captured all the information over here, and now this is much easier to read. Okay, as you can see dc1 pass test, so I'm sure that gives you a good idea as to what is running and what is not running on these domain controllers. And fortunately for us, all the tests have passed without any problems. Okay, so again, this is a great idea of checking the validity and the integrity of your domain controller. Run these tests from time to time so that you are sure that your domain controllers are working and Active Directory synchronization is taking place as expected. Going back to our notes over here, let's go on to the next topic, and this is a tool called the Active Directory Sizer that helps you plan it's a capacity planning tool. It helps you plan as to the size of the Active Directory. You are at one of the advanced, in other words, you've learned a lot of advanced features of Active Directory, and now you have enough information to act as a consultant. In other words, you can go into an organization and then actually look at the needs of that organization and determine what hardware they need. By hardware, I just don't mean how many clients and how many servers, but when I say hardware, I mean hardware from the perspective of Active Directory. In other words, if they're going to have 10,000 users, then you got to know how many sites they're going to run this Active Directory on, and how many domain controllers would be needed in order for the domain to work efficiently for that number of users. So what the Active Directory Sizer tool lets you do is estimate the number of domain controllers that you will need, including the global catalog servers and bridgehead servers. It will also let you estimate as to how many processes that you need on each machine, how many hard disks would be needed to store the Active Directory database, the memory that is required, and the network bandwidth that will be utilized because of the replication traffic due to the replication of domain controllers, the global catalog, and the replication traffic between the bridgehead servers, not to mention the DNS server as well. Okay, so Active Directory Sizer tool is a special tool. This came out with Windows 2000. When Windows 2000 came out, Microsoft also came out with this tool so that consultants would have a good idea as to the number of domain controllers that they have to set up in order for Active Directory to work efficiently. This tool can be downloaded from Microsoft's website. Just go to Microsoft.com and go to the download section and do a search for Active Directory Sizer. You'll find that there is a file called setup.exe. What I've done is I'm going to go to DC1 now, and on DC1 I've created a folder called AD Sizer, and in there is the program that I downloaded from Microsoft's website. So let's go ahead and install this tool known as Active Directory Sizer. Once this tool is installed, it's basically a wizard. Let me just finish the installation of this tool. Anyone who uses computer, that's fine. Let's do a complete installation. Okay, it's a small tool. Didn't take too long to install. And I'm going to click on the close button over here. Fortunately for us, we don't have to type a command prompt for this tool. So you go to all programs, and we should have a new link over here, Active Directory Sizer, and here's the Active Directory Sizer tool. Like I was saying, this is simply a wizard that you run, and the wizard will help you actually determine how many domain controllers you need for the size of network that you plan to have. This tool will help you determine the configuration that you need for either the domain or for the site. Let's run this for the domain. So I'm going to click on the domain configuration, right click and click on add domain, and it's asking us for the name. Remember, we're just playing what if analysis. It's not looking at our actual domain and making any decisions. We're just playing what if analysis over here. Okay, so with that in mind, Let's say our domain is going to be over here, world.com. Click on the next button. And now it wants to know the total number of users in this domain. I'm just going to start with a small value. Let's say that this is a small company, so that you appreciate the difference between the number of domain controllers depending on the size of the network. All right, so let's say that this particular company is simply going to have 100 users in the domain. What percent of these users would be concurrently active during peak hour? The employees of this company work pretty hard. Let's say all of them will be up and running at all times. How many additional attributes will you have per user? In other words, within each user account, what else are you going to define? I'm going to leave it at 25. This would be attributes such as the telephone numbers and the group memberships and so forth. Okay, so let's leave it at that. Click on the next button. What is the average number of groups a user will belong to? Well, let's say in our company, it's a small company, we will not have too many groups, and each user may not belong to more than 5 groups. Okay. How frequently do user passwords expire in days? Let's say that we have set up a policy where the user password expires every 30 days. What is your average logon rate per second during peak hours? Now, you can enter some values over here, or you can click on this checkbox and it's going to estimate it for you. It brings up with this handy calculator and saying that, well, according to the statistics that they have gone through, the following numbers are valid for our domain. So we're going to accept it the way it is. Basically what this is saying is that every 3 seconds or so, users are going to log in and there'll be some network connections made from time to time. I'm going to click on the next button and see what else it's going to ask us. How many, over here, as you can see, it started with the introduction. Now it went through user information. Now it's going to go through computer information. How many Windows 2000 computers would you have? Once again, it simply says Windows 2000 because this tool came out with the advent of Windows 2000. It is equally valid for Windows XP as well as for Server 2003. So let's say each user is going to have a computer. So I'm going to say 100 computers, and we'll have, let's say, 10 servers. So how about 110 computers? Actually, let's put 100 over here, because over here, very neatly, it asks us how many other computers. Those are our 10 servers. And besides this, how many other Active Directory objects will be published in the Active Directory? Let's say another 10, meaning printers and other shares and so forth. Click on next, and now it's going to ask us more questions. What is the desired average CPU utilization? 50% is fine for us. What is your preferred CPU's type for domain controllers? Let it be on auto select. And let's click on the next button. It's going to ask about administration. In other words, how often do you make changes? So on a weekly basis, let's say that I'm going to add, I don't know, out of a number of users for 100, let's say there'll be 2 users being added on a regular basis. 1 person will be deleted. And let's say on a weekly basis, I'll be modifying 10 user accounts from time to time. Click on next. And now it's asking me exchange related questions. I'm really not interested in that. So I'm going to click on finish over here. And it's giving us a report saying as to what we need. Basically over here what it is saying is that for 100 users and for 110 computers, remember, 1 computer per user and 10 servers and some other objects, that is 10 that we created, 1 server is sufficient. And that makes sense. For 100 users, 1 server should be able to do the job. And it's telling us that the approximate size of the domain database is going to be about 24 megabytes. Again, no big deal. And users 100, all you will need is 1 domain controller and 1 bridgehead server, which will act as a domain controller. Okay, so you don't need any additional domain controller. That's what it's trying to say over here. What else? Now, those of you looking at this figure, just so that you don't get off track on this, 24 megabytes is just the size of the Active Directory. In other videos from Train Signal, you may have noticed that we have backed up the system state database, and every time you back it up, you'll see that the total amount of space that you need to back up the system state data is about 250 megabytes. That's because 24 megabytes is just one component of what you're backing up in the system state data. So please don't confuse the two, because every time you perform, how do you back up the Active Directory? Well, you back up the system state database. But when you're backing up the system state database, you're backing up a lot of other things besides the Active Directory itself, namely the COM class registration database, the registry, and so forth. Okay, so please keep that in mind. This 24 megabytes is just the amount of space you need for the Active Directory, but the Active Directory cannot work on its own. You need to back it up along with other components in the system state data. Now, just so that you get an idea, what we're going to do is put in some bigger values over here. Okay, so let's start this one more time. And over here, I'm going to say modify the domain. And let's go on to our users one more time. This time, instead of 100, let's put in a higher value. So you are working as a consultant for a larger company. And let's say these people will have 50,000 users. Okay, let's click on the next button. And now, what is the average number of groups? Well, this time, because it's a larger company, let's say each of the users will belong to at least 15 groups. Passwords expire in 30 days. Well, let's try to estimate it now. The value has gone up, so we're going to accept the value that it gave for the amount of for the number of computers and users that we have set up so far. How many Windows 2000 computers do you have? Well, 50,000 users. How about 40,000 computers? And there will be, let's say, 100 servers. So 40,000 computers. 10,000 people will be sharing computers. And how many other computers? These are our servers. Let's say there'll be a total of 100 servers. How many other objects will be published? In this case, about 1,000 objects will be published. Click on next. Domain controller utilization, let's leave it at that. Changes, well, now our values will be pretty high. Let's take some values over here. On a weekly basis, out of 50,000 users, let's say that you're going to be adding, I would say, about 100 users a week, and maybe deleting, let's say, 25 users per week, and modifying, I would say, about 150 users on a weekly basis. Okay, click on next. Again, these are just estimates, and we are not interested in exchange. I'm going to click on the finish button over here, and let's see what the results it came up with. There we go. Our size has gone up tremendously. All right, size has gone up to one gigabyte. Now I think I made a mistake. Number of users, I intended to put 50,000, not 5,000. So let's go back, because yeah, I have 40,000 computers over here. So I made an error in entering that number over there. It should be 50,000. Okay, let's click on finish, and let's see if that changes some values. There we go. So based on this, you can play a what if analysis, and it will suggest to you exactly how many servers you need, how many computers you need to come up. And you know, it's a planning tool. I'm not going to save anything over here and get out of this. It's simply a planning tool that will help you analyze and determine the hardware that you need so that the Active Directory performs in an efficient manner. Alrighty, going back to our talking points over here. In this video, we covered a lot of topics. We first installed the Active Directory support tools, and then we did some extensive labs on replication monitoring, and then we saw how to monitor replication between our domain controllers, how to read the reports. Then we also used two command line tools over here, namely the DC diagnostic tool and the rep admin tool. We generated reports, and we saw how the reports actually helped us in troubleshooting. What we also did was created a batch file to automate the replication of our domains in the entire benandbrady.com domain. And lastly, we used the Active Directory Sizer tool to do some analysis and find out how many domain controllers we will need for a certain number of users and computers. I thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you very soon in a different video in Active Directory.